state of the world today? I mean, in terms of social, environmental, political, what's going on in the planet? How would you describe what's happening?
Well, I see the world in chaos, but to me, chaos and order is the same thing. You know, and I don't think it's much different than it has ever been. We've always had wars and rumors of wars, and we've always had conflict, and we've always had killing, and we've always had famine, and but every generation who's living in it feels that this has got to be the worst. But I think that this is the way of samsara, and if it's changed for us significantly, we probably won't be here to experience that change. So we have to find some other way of existing meaningfully in the world, because I believe there's always going to be conflict.
So, do you think that conflict is a useful exercise in our evolution? Is it part of our conscious evolution, of our spiritual evolution?
Well, I don't think that it's necessarily useful, but I think when it exists, we can make use of it.
So how would you describe the forces at work that create this conflict? I mean, what is the conflict? The conflict, I imagine, is an internal one that's just projected onto the world, but how would you describe that?
Well, I think our conflict has to do with our own internal conflict of how we perceive the world and how we walk through the world. And so it's because I can't get along with you, I feel threatened by you, that conflicts arise. I don't have maybe the best view considering others as oneself. And so in these ways, we do things to one another that create conflict. Some through commission, some through omission. Sometimes it's something that we should have done that we did not do, that bears witness to the ravaging of others. And because we did not act, we did not take responsibility, we did not interject something in there. We have a situation that could have been avoided if we had just had the fearlessness to speak to the issue as it was unfolding.
So in your personal experience, I mean, I'm sure that you go through conflicts every day. I'm sure you get irritated with people perhaps, or just maybe a little bit negative thoughts. How do you approach those moments? How do you identify those moments, and what do you do when you identify those moments? If you could paraphrase, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah. Well, it just depends on the day that you catch me on. I mean, I can be doing the very same thing on 3 different days, and depending on what my mental state is, the outcome is going to be different. So let's say you're walking through the door in a mall, you open the door, you plan to walk through, and somebody just walks right in front of you and walks through the door. If it's a bad day, you might grab them. If it's a middling day, you might say, "You're welcome." And if it's a good day, you don't even notice that they walked through. It was your pleasure to open the door for them. So you see, it's not so much the external situation, but our mind state at any given time. So part of the of what we might call a spiritual practice, but to me, it's very difficult to separate spiritual from just secular life. It's just life. But part of the practice is to be mindful of what mental states are present right here, right now, what mental states are arising. And the practice is to keep unarisen, unwholesome states from arising, or to subdue those that have arisen, or to foster unarisen, wholesome states, and to maintain those that are present. So that's our whole practice in a nutshell. That is a paraphrase.
So I guess that's kind of leads into to sort of answer my next question, which is that how do you develop that ability to, because it seems to me that's what the world needs, is the world needs that moment of pause when you have something and you feel that contraction inside and you want to react a certain way. How do you develop that moment where you can actually not be a slave to that moment, but to actually be separated from it?
Well, first of all, you really have to have the intention. Mind is chief. Whatever we think and ponder on, that's the inclination of our mind. So if we really, really want to operate that way, we have to put the intention out there. And then we have to put effort to the intention. And that means that in the present moment, I have to be willing to pull myself back. There's nobody else that's going to be able to do it for me. I have to do it myself from the inside out. So sometimes intellectually we can have the idea that we want to be well, happy, and peaceful, and we want the same for you. But when it comes down to actually doing being in that tight space when ego is screaming or fear is raging, right then, right there, can you stop and remember your great wish? And have you developed the skillfulness to employ it at the moment that you need it? So this is what practice is all about in the Buddhist community. Having that great wish, fostering the right mental states, recognizing when we miss the mark and being able to own up to that, take ownership, and continually cultivating to do better and better. And what happens is that your whole idea, your whole view gets transformed. Our information comes in, internal base meets an external base. Consciousness arises, and the three of these make contact. And with contact comes something. It comes feeling, if it's pleasant, I like it, I want to stay around. If it's unpleasant, I don't like it, I want it to go away. And sometimes we're just ambivalent about it. But on that basis, there is this aversion or this desire. And if we are recognizing what is arising as a result of my contact, the internal base to the external base, if I can cut off the craving or the aversion to it and just be there with it, that's how we begin to make progress. So, all the time, most times things are not that good, but I can recognize, an unpleasant feeling has arisen in me. But the thing is, I know that it's impermanent. If I sit with this for a minute and don't just completely lose my head, lose my mind, it will go away and I can respond more resourcefully in the next moment or the next hour or maybe tomorrow.
So it's in a way you're saying it's a combination of an intellectual exercise as well as an intentional exercise to capture, to be aware of those moments. What I'd like this project to do is actually help people, to guide people to become more aware of those moments, because I think that's where real change, I think, needs to happen, is with every individual. So what do you do to practice those moments? Is it an intellectual memory, or do you actually you probably explained to some degree.
Well, it's more than just intellectual. We're more than just that. Not just thinking of a brain, although there's a very important part. But there is, like when we talk about feeling, that's a whole body thing. If you approach me in a certain way and I don't feel comfortable with that, my mind may not have ticked off a reason for that, except that I have a check. So we have to honor other ways that information is known to us, or ways that our body speaks to situations. And so it's all of that. So I'm constantly running over in my mind when the body responds in a certain way. Is this happening because of what's actually happening now? Or is this tied to memory of something else? And this is the way that we are constantly doing. Like if we're sitting in meditation, sometimes we're just reflecting on why we do the things we do. What came before that? What came before that response? And we can develop a critical thinking ability to chart backwards to see how the present moment arrived. So they called the Buddhist followers the analyzers in that day. But they also called them the happy ones, because this takes away a lot of the confusion about what we are experiencing right now. And when that confusion is gone, there can be some happiness, even if the situation's not like you want it to be, simply because you recognize what is happening. You understand how this is happening. And so there is, in the midst of that sorrow or even that anger, that feeling that is there, you feel some sense of control, some sense of self-mastery. And even if you can't hold yourself, you can't gather yourself, there is still that knowledge that the time will come that the hindsight will become foresight, will become insight. Yeah.
Prayer versus meditation, would you say that they're the same thing, different intention, same thing, same intention?
Well, in one way they're different, and in another way you could say that they're the same. If I'm feeling weak, not so much in control of myself, I may utter a prayer to who? A prayer to a God, if I believe in, a prayer to the universe, just sending up the wish or the plea for help, just grasping at some strengthening. And so sometimes, prayer is what's needed because we're in a space where we're calling out for help. Meditation is something that we're working ourselves. We're doing. We're not like just folding our hands, relaxing and going away to la la land for a little while. We're actually undergoing a mental conditioning, laying new neural pathways and closing off old ones that will help us to eliminate our habitual tendencies that we want to abandon. So, but both of them are very useful, and they serve us as sentient beings, feeling beings, and we use whichever one we need at the moment.
So, do you find for yourself personally that it's a nice you use aspects of both?
Well, I'd have to say right now I use meditation, but I have almost 50 years of prayer. I'm way stacked up on the prayer side. What's so exciting and encouraging for me at this time is that I am learning to really go inward and draw on my own resources. And I'm finding that I have a capability and a quality even that was not apparent before I looked deeply and before I applied the repetition that brings about the skillfulness.
Is this how you describe maybe the contrast between Christianity and Buddhism?
That would be a little too simplistic, I do think, I can remember the times that I didn't try as hard as I could. Just a love affair with God and love affair with Jesus. My problem wasn't with them. My problem was between me and you. So what I found was the love that I had for them didn't necessarily translate into me loving you. And so something else was needed. Mostly it left me depressed. If I love God so much, why do I do these things to other people that I do? But here, finding that I have a capacity within myself that I can cultivate the same qualities, that it's possible to come up to the fullness of the measure of the stature of Jesus or Siddhartha. Me, myself, this lies resident. It's exciting, and even if I never come up to it, to know that it is possible encourages and gives impetus to the effort. Yeah.
This is a question I always ask. I've talked to an archbishop and an Anglican bishop and asked them this as well. From their point of view, are we all capable of being Jesus? Are we all capable of being, in other words, are we the Messiah? Because it seems like Buddhism says that we all have the same access to.
Well, I really think that there is some misunderstanding even of what Jesus said. If you take his teachings, if you put them up against Buddhism, they say one thing. If you put them up against the Old Testament teachings, they say something else. That's this whole relativity thing, and that's another discussion maybe. But I believe, there are the scriptures there that say Jesus, the firstborn of many brethren. Well, who would the many brethren be? He said, I am the light of the world while I'm in the world. And he turned to the disciples and said, you also are the light of the world. Who is this? So when I now am studying the teachings of the Buddha, I always feel like if you want to know what a master means, don't ask his students. They don't know. They're trying to get it. But you ask another master what a master meant, and maybe he can shed light on it in a way that you could get it a little bit better. So I so much more deeply understand some of the teachings of Jesus that I misinterpreted before. And so I draw on those teachings as well as on the Buddhist teachings today. Yes.
That's cool.
And yes, I do think we are able to come up to the fullness of the measure of the stature of Jesus or the Buddha.
Which kind of leads me to my next question, which is, what do you think the purpose of consciousness is? Do you have is there a Buddhist understanding of that, or is it a personal thing?
Well, this gets to be a really deep conversation. People are always asking me, what's our purpose for living, and trying to find our purpose and our destiny. And I'm always saying, there was no purpose, but now that I'm here, what will I do? The Buddha always said, we don't have to go back to those things. We start from right where we are and we work our way backwards. And if we did that instead of the preponderance of the thicket of views, that really don't lead us to peace and happiness in the moment, then we'll get more done. So I leave those kind of speculations to the speculators.
So would you say then, in a way, it sounds like that what Buddhism really promotes, this is what I got, we interviewed Pekchok Rinpoche.
Yes.
The impression that I got, and what I've gotten from reading, is that basically all Buddhism tries to drive you to is the moment. And that's where all the answers will come. Once you get there, the whole world opens up.
Yeah, it's a lot of people say it's such an intellectual way, but it's more than that. I think like maybe intellect is one of the doorways, but there is something beyond that, something beyond this consciousness that is formed through input from the six senses, and the Buddha includes consciousness as one of the sense gates, and so I agree. Just having my own experiences in life, that is true. So, but you can't really lead somebody to that through linguistics. You can't do it through intellect. It is a direct experience. This penetration, crossing through some boundary into some immaterial state, some space of no thingness out of which everything has come. So it gets hard to put these kinds of things in the words. I'm just kind of like trying to explain blue to a blind man, but there is something that can be known, it can be experienced.
Yes, that's the issue I have with this project. I know that in a way what people do often is to get people to at least give you notice, is to give them a promise of something, of what they'll get from it. But I believe the same thing that you say, which is that first everyone has to get into the moment before they can actually have any really worthwhile questions. So sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So here's the thing. For me, Buddhism doesn't give us the promise of anything. The Buddhism just simply says, get right here. Because this is really all there is, and this is where we find ourselves. But once you get right there, you inherit something. You inherit what is available being in that moment, and it is something, So I like not having a promise of anything now. I can take a look-see attitude. I believe that there is, and it's a belief that's not just a blind belief. It's a belief based on the progress that I've already made. That there is something, that there is the promise. But you didn't give me the promise. My own walk has given me that promise. And that's different.
Would you say that the state that you achieve in meditation is the state that you aspire to be in at all times? Or is it something that it's
when you first start practicing, like you sit on a pillow and you do things, and you're like training yourself, and actually you're training your whole body to respond in a certain way. But the real practice is not done on the meditation pillow. The Buddha says to meditate when you're sitting, standing, walking, lying down. What he's trying to say is you live in a certain state 24/7. So meditation for me is not the act of coming and sitting on a pillow and closing my eyes and focusing on the breath. It's not that at all. Meditation is being in the present moment with my eyes wide open and understanding what is right in front of me, what is happening right here, right now, knowing what thoughts are running through the mind. It's knowing what feelings I have. It's having a peripheral vision that I can be focused here, yet I see all of this. It's an awakening to life in the moment. And I think it, as I say, some of these things get very difficult to articulate with just such a mundane modes of expression. But to experience even a little bit of it makes one want to go further, delve in, apply oneself to the process, because there is a benefit that can be realized immediately, and that gets more and more expansive as you continue. Yeah.
What would it take to get, do you think, to get the mass of humanity to embrace that philosophy?
Well, the first thing that I want to say is we're already meditating on something. You know, we're always already being mindful. Something, just what are we being mindful of is the question, you know. And I think that we're already have some idea, some great wish to do better, to be better. You know, we want life. Everybody has the wish to be happy, you know, and everybody wants to be free from suffering. And it's having the enough information to begin to develop the skillfulness to bring that into being is the great challenge. So I think that when we separate mindfulness or meditation from the Buddha Dharma, then many people will benefit from it. You don't have to be Buddhist to do that. There is some other aspects of the Buddhist practice besides meditation and besides mindfulness, and you know, and we start with right view. What is right view? What is right view to you? What is right view to me? So there is some premise of some means by which I am informed or encouraged to look at how I look at things, you know, and that's where we get into different spiritual paths or different, quote, religious aspects. What is our frame of reference for how we should walk in the world and have our being? So that part aside, however, even just the practice, simple practice of mindfulness, of sitting and resting. We tell our children when they get upset, stop and count to 10. I mean, nobody quoted that from the Buddha book, chapter 12, page 69. I mean, it's almost a naturally occurring instinct, and it's a wisdom that is it's just there apparent in us. We already know that if we can stop and breathe for a minute, we can gather and collect ourselves. So I think it's definitely possible and suitable for meditation to be in the schools. It's just we have to get over our you know, myopic fears and views regarding philosophies and religions. And if something is good, no matter where it's found, you know, truth is truth, or what's good is good, you know, whether it's in Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Buddhism, I mean, it doesn't really matter. And you don't have to take the whole ball of wax. Just take that part that you think is beneficial for you and for others, and just employ that, and we'll get a long ways towards changing the world. But if I ever think that we will have absolute peace on earth, I don't think so. I don't think this is the realm for it. I don't think this is a sphere that will be found. But it sure could be a lot better than it is.
So when you hear about you know 40% of species going extinct due to climate change, or just the state of the environment, the state of the social order, how do you keep yourself from being negative about that?
Well, it's very difficult. We need a lot of education. And it takes a lot for us to change as human beings. I myself, I very seldom teach on the ecological system and things that are happening, because I already know what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. You know, but the more informed I get, the more committed I get towards making some changes. For instance, I'm in Canada right now, and you know, they have these places where you ride bicycles and you could like just rent them and all of these things, and it's really good. But me, I'm not riding a bicycle. You know, I will get in the car and I will drive. Well, I was not that interested in the whole notion of the electric car. But now I am. The more I read about it, I've been in one. You know, I've taken it for a test drive. I see more and more people with them. I'm hearing about how they're saving on gas, and I don't mean just from the financial aspect, but just in terms of the oil resource. You know, I think this is good. This is good. And so the more we allow ourselves to be informed by these things, the more we will have the impetus to want to change, to participate in the change, and the more we will start to adjust ourselves internally and take responsibility. I am getting extremely concerned about the climate change, but I don't know what causes that. So now I read about something, and I say, "Oh, I didn't know that." You know, and the more I know, the more I feel responsible for being, a global participant in turning this around. I think a lot of this has come from some notion that the earth has been given to us, human beings, you know, to subdue and to have control over. And for me now, that's a decidedly wrong view. For a great portion of my life, that was the right view. It was just given to me. But now I've grown up, you know, and I realized that I don't own anything, and that I have a sacred responsibility to protect and all, you know, that this whole world. And so my views are changing. This is how we change.
Well, you kind of answered that one too.
I do have to say this while you're looking for where you want to go. I recently started a foundation, the Treasure Human Life Foundation. But before I even finished getting all the paperwork together, you know, all of a sudden, all of these animals started coming up to me. Every place I go, you know, when my children grew up, I was through with the dog and cat thing, you know, and so for 20 years, you know, I have not had any pets. And now all of a sudden all these dogs come up and my heart is like tugged and I'm just drawn to them and they're drawn to me, you know. So now I'm thinking, you know, maybe we have to take out the human part. I mean, so this is how quickly things can go when you just really open up. And I can't say, oh, I'm not the kind of person. Like I don't, you know, I love animals from afar. I don't want them, I don't want to have to take care of them. I don't, you know, and now something is just changing. And we have to go with the flow. It's so busy trying to control the outcome of everything or even the pathway towards everything that has us in so much trouble. But when something presents itself, if we get more of an investigative energy, this is a new thing. What does this mean? You know, and we can find new ways of being in the world, and it's just wonderful.
So how do you personally then choose to affect the world?
Well, I sort of just show up someplace and see, you know, bear witness to whatever's there. I don't really have a lot of ideas about what we should do, how we should do it. But I do think when people are in a certain situation, they have some definite ideas about what is needful. And if we show up somewhere and just meld with them, it's sort of like mind wrapping mind, and we can kind of know what is needed, and then we just take that action. So in North Carolina, I went to set up a monastery on a ridge. It was beautiful, and people could come and sit and meditate and be content until the cows came home. But when I found out what was happening in the city and the plight of the homeless youth there, and you know, they were basically an invisible segment of society. You know, I just went back and said, you know, when times are going good, we should sit on the pillow. When times are bad, we should get up and go down to the city and help. And so I ended up being on a path completely different from what I had intended to do. And it just seems to not be stopping. But that's okay. I'm enjoying the journey. It's sort of like when you wade out into the water, you know, you put forth some effort to step out there. But, you know, the Buddha says when you go so far, then the current picks you up and it takes you on downstream. Then it sort of becomes effortless. And wherever you are, there you are. Whatever there is to do, there it is.
So this is a big question in a way, but I mean, so how would you say that your awareness has developed from your earliest memory to now, as far as your way of living? I mean, did you come from a traditional?
I from the time I was a little girl, like 6 years old, you know, I really had some type of a spiritual experience, and when I tried to share it at my church, I mean, they just didn't understand what I was talking about. And so I just had to kind of tuck that away. But, I just had a fortunate birth to have that awareness at a young age. It caused a lot of problems when you're a teenager and, you're getting a whole different view of something, but yet something was already there, bumping up against that continually. And you lose your way for a minute, but, you just gravitate back to it because it's so strong. It's almost like you came here, you came here with it. And in time it becomes you know that you'll die with regret if you don't turn full frontal and investigate it. So that's how life has been for me. So I'd always, had a certain spiritual bent, if you will. But it wasn't always combined with wisdom. There was a lot of compassion. What the Buddhist path is doing is bringing up an equal measure of wisdom. It has helped me to understand more deeply the experiences in my life. It helps me to look at something and be able to touch it from a lot of different sides. And so it's been the great combination for me, Christianity and Buddhism, and a whole lot of other things in between those two, bookends. So it's been a wonderful life. It's more exciting to me now than it was before because I am developing, however meager, some skillfulness. And I think the biggest thing for me is I had this yearning to do what I want to do and not do what I don't want to do. And that's where Buddhism has been particularly helpful for me in being able to not do what I don't want to do most of the time and do a lot of the things that I do want to do.
So is that in a way how you'd encapsulate what Buddhism promotes in an individual? Is it just basically to find yourself? How would you encapsulate?
I think it helped me to realize what I am not. Most traditions are always, they speak of abundance and they're always adding these things, but the Buddhist is more like a banana and it's peeling away. You're not this, you're not this, you're not this, and you're not this. And those were the things that troubled me, all of those things that I thought I was, that I didn't think were useful or beneficial, and now I'm finding I'm not that. How wonderful this is. So it was more of a peeling away what I am not.
It seems like kind of almost a paradox that you have to go become not selfish, but very self-oriented to find out that really your uniqueness is equal to everything.
Yeah. That is the whole thing. For me, the practice of Buddhism or understanding the Buddha Dharma is to be able to ride that paradox. It's not this or this, it's this and this. And when we can get into that space, life becomes so much clearer. And we're not locked, nothing is concrete. And it's a wonderful space to be because it allows so much openness, so much flexibility. And instead of really seeing so much of the difference that exists and everything, you see the commonalities. It's just so apparent. It's apparent of what I want for myself as a person, as a human being, what I want for my family, what I want, for my children, what I want for my friends, how I want to live, what I want to do, where I want to be. All of these things, suddenly you start to see the commonality everywhere. And you begin to realize that what is really lacking is the skillfulness to bring it into fruition. And that's where I do think that meditation across the board is helpful and it's useful. And it's not to negate prayer. I think prayer is good. I think one time they had in where I live in Hendersonville, North Carolina, they wanted to have stop the city council from opening each session with prayer, so they called me and asked me would I speak against it. I'm like, no, I think prayer is good. Need to pray more. Yeah, it's like that.
Well, it's funny you bring up the abundance thing earlier, because that's me and Fabi have this discussion about abundance. It seems like it's the new catchphrase, it seems, that everyone's promising. We were talking about promise earlier. It seems like that's how people catch people, with promises, right? Because everyone's trying to get people's attention, it seems. And the abundance thing. So you're saying in a way that Buddhism kind of as a contrast of that. It doesn't try to inspire. Well, I'm just going to answer.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're asking, and I think that is true. So many times, somebody would ask the Buddha about something. Said, "Did I ever promise you that?" He said, "All I'm telling you is I'm just bringing in your face the truth of suffering. Suffering can be known, and it has a cause. Anything that has a cause has a cure, and there is a way leading to the cure. That's it, So that is more, when we look at the human condition, abundance is nice to have, but even when we have things, they bring us suffering. That's so apparent. I wanted that new fancy car, and about a year into the car notes, I'm like, why did I buy this? I want that big house, but the upkeep, I wanted all of that land, and so we start to see an inherent unsatisfactoriness in everything, I wanted that man, I wanted to have children, and then we see that there's something else that we have a desire for that is more lasting than that, and it is the absence of suffering.
Can I ask then? Because this is our conversation, right? I think that Randall has this bias about the word abundance because we associate it with material things, but I think that you can also be abundant in clarity, abundant in compassion, or abundant in enlightenment, or abundant in, that's...
Well, I think that is true, but certain words trigger certain things, and we have to know where we are, and how we associate things. And if you look at how this abundance has been wrapped even within spiritual disciplines, it is around getting more. It is around the blessings and the cursings. It is around, and there is a sense that if I am blessed, I have more. But being blessed doesn't always mean having more. Having a certain contentment with whatever you have is priceless. How do you put a value on that? And when you travel around the world and you see people who don't have what we have in this country, and yet they're so much more content, and yet we have everything and nothing is ever enough. And when we really stop and look and see the suffering that's in it, it's not in the things, but it is within, it's in our mindset regarding the things. How many can lose their title, or lose their job, or lose their husband, or lose their house, and not feel that they have been deprived, not feel that they have lost something? But for me, abundance is becoming the laying down of superfluous things. I don't need all of those things. Less is more. And in this simplicity, I am finding more of a sense of abundance, as you mean, but I don't even think of it as abundance. I don't have any problem with simplicity and fewness of wishes. That, fewness of wishes sounds better to me than abundance, because I know what also goes with the whole mindset with that.
I would imagine that's why you travel, is because you're trying to affect the world from your perspective.
Well, I travel because I'm invited, so I'm not really trying to effect a change in the world. But if there is the request, then we certainly should. So for me, it's not really trying to do anything for anybody else. It really is, as you say, it is a paradox, because it's a very personal practice. So whenever I'm learning something, it's not for me to learn so I can tell you that's what you need to do, but it's for me to apply it to my own life. So there, through these precepts and that I personally take on, and my own example, maybe somebody sees something and they ask a question, then we can dialogue. And so it's kind of like it's kind of like that. Again, it's this whole minimalist notion. Some people, want a lot of students. I don't want a lot of students. People are emailing me every day saying, can I be your student? I'm going to be your own teacher. But I like to be a good friend on the path. No need to accumulate anything, and to see accumulation as a responsibility, a thing I have to take care of. That could take away time or energy or focus. We're not, and also can all bring you back to a sense of a personal I. The thing about this whole I-ness paradox is that the more you peel back the what you are not, the less and the more you're focusing on yourself to really see in these minute corners, the less of a self you can find, until soon there's not much thought about. I would use the words in a conventional sense so we can communicate with our I and you and she and him, but we know on a very deep level, on a very fundamental level, that it's not like that. And there starts to get to be less and less concern about I. Hence, the need for abundance in the way that we had thought of it before goes out the window. There's no I that needs anything, and you become more concerned about others, and it just, everything changes and goes another direction.
Thank you very much. That was great.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you be a part of this. Very much.
Thank you.